Good morning, everyone, or whatever day it is that you're watching our virtual Sunday school class. Thank you for tuning in so that we can talk a little bit today about rebuilding. Let's talk about whether we're rebuilding our lives, our hopes, our jobs, our church, or just adjusting to a new reality. We're all constantly rebuilding. We're thinking back to how things have been, making a plan to go forward in what has happened now, and always having faith lead us in our steps toward rebuilding our hopes and lives and dreams. So let's go back to 1920. Let's think about our forefathers and mothers who put together the funds to build the old sanctuary next door to where I'm sitting now. Think about, as Joe Allen Moose so beautifully says, how excited they must have been on that first Sunday they walked into that sanctuary. Perhaps they were visiting dignitaries, but they were all there to sit on brand new shining pews, looking at floors that were shined to a high gloss and seeing the sun come through beautiful stained glass windows. This was the new sanctuary they had built 100 years ago. The same year that women got the right to vote. So lots of things were happening in 1920. It was in the run-up to the Great Depression, but our church had stepped out. Our church had made a decision to find a new place to worship. And 1947, just about 27 years later, the two churches in Siloam Springs merged into one church. Perhaps because this building was spacious enough, the people had had a vision to anticipate growth, and they joined together to be one Methodist congregation in Siloam Springs. So that's a wonderful history. But we've all seen what happens to a building that falls into disuse and abandonment. Over the years, the beautiful windows start to crack, they get hit by a rock, they fall into disrepair, and the lead sags, and they are no longer as beautiful as they once were. Light fixtures go out and aren't replaced, the floors become scratched, and the whole building sits quietly, waiting for someone to see potential. So it takes a time and a person to inspire a congregation, to inspire people to think about what they can do to see a vision of serving the children in the community in a new way and cause them to come together to bring a church back. So in this light, let's go back and think about a time in December, 446 years before Jesus walked on this earth, and a man named Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah was in an interesting position. You might say he had a pretty plush job because he was the cupbearer for the king. That's a great thing if you think he lived in an opulent palace, but it was his job to taste the wine and make sure someone hadn't poisoned it. So in a way, his job was very cool and very dangerous. Still, Nehemiah was a trusted advisor to this king, and God put him in that place for a certain time, and that time is in this year of 446 BC. Nehemiah's brother came and visited him, and he said, I just have to tell you, he said, the city of Jerusalem is in disarray. People are starting to try to come back, but the walls are torn down so their homes aren't safe and protected. And it's just a bad time. They aren't really serving God like they need to. Well, this put a burden on Nehemiah's heart. And for 4 months, he prayed and he grieved and he asked God to forgive the people of Israel. And he asked God to help find a way to rebuild those walls. So as it came about, he finally got the courage to talk to King Artaxerxes and say, can I please go to Jerusalem and evaluate what's going on there? At that time, Persia was the kingdom that controlled the Jewish region of Jerusalem, so the king agreed to allow him to go and assess the situation. When Nehemiah went there, he walked the walls and he studied the situation, and he came up with a plan and got the agreement of the king to allow him to oversee rebuilding the walls. So now we have a job to assemble the right people. You need the right people in the right place at the right time. So Nehemiah brought together goldsmiths, merchants, women, men, sheep herders, people who weren't wall builders. But he had a plan, and he also brought it home to them. He assigned each one and each tribe and even the priest to rebuild the walls near where they lived. So this was a great benefit to them because it kept their families safer. And would you believe in 52 days they got those walls rebuilt? That's just pretty incredible timing. So what happened then is there began to be opposition. Anytime you start a new project, people say, well, you shouldn't do it if you can't do it like this, or I just am afraid of you now that you're putting up a wall. So what did Nehemiah do? They prayed, they had faith, and they set a guard so that at night those tribes that lived nearby wouldn't come in and knock down the walls that they'd worked all day to build. So you can have faith, but you still sometimes have to have a plan. When the walls were finished, the king was so pleased with Nehemiah's work that he appointed him the governor of Jerusalem, and Nehemiah served for 12 years. So what does that ancient story have to do with us today? For our church family, it provides an outline for us to follow. And we very carefully did follow this. You know, our building committee sought the input of experts, asked for design, asked for budgets, asked for all kinds of information from other people who had different experiences and different jobs than we had, so that when we came up with a plan, we knew we were stepping out in faith, but we also knew we had given due diligence to figuring out how to do this. So today, if you drive by our beautiful old sanctuary, you will see it's the beginnings of rebuilding to achieve a collective vision for a ministry center with potential to bring growth and service to others in our community to a new level. And this is so exciting. You begin to see what can happen when everyone comes together in faith and belief. When we started to ask our congregation and members of our community to make a gift, we didn't know that there would become a pandemic where we would have to slow down our economy and slow down our plans to build. But God has seen us through. And we want to thank every single one of you who has given us a gift of your time, your talent, and your funds so that we could bring this to reality. Manny's vision to reach out to the children and families in this community got us started and helped us see what we could do as a church. And together with your money, your time, and your gifts, we have been able to bring this to fruition. And that makes me think about what we can do in our lives. Over these next few months, we'll begin to see a transformation in our church, and we'll begin to see a transformation in our old sanctuary as it becomes a ministry center to serve the community better. So you have made this happen through prayer, through faith, and through a plan that you have provided. So in our lives, can we do this same thing? Can we start this day out and reach out in love without judging, listening and praying for understanding, so that we can be the disciples we're called to be in this world, so that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus, so that we can do good deeds and take action to bring people together in these unusual times. It reminds me of this wonderful song that Gloria Gaither wrote many years ago. And one of the stanzas goes like this: let the church be the church, let the people rejoice. We have settled the question, we have made our choice. Let the anthems ring out, songs of victory swell, for the church triumphant is alive and well.